Canadians.
All
Oh,
right.
love your shirt, by the way. That's
Thank
fantastic.
you. Thank you. I've got this one that says, let's talk about sex, and I've got another one that says, got lube.
That's fantastic.
I'm gonna try to forego the video because I think that might be what caused the problem.
All right. It's okay. I'm the pretty one out of the two of us anyway.
But I've got the new magnificent Eric and Gord t-shirt on.
And I don't, because mine's in the wash.
All right, let's get going. I'll just do a quick little intro before I say hi. Hi there. Happy Tuesday. It's March the 3rd, 2020, and I'm Eric, talking at you once again from Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, where earlier today I had an abortion joke, but I decided not to keep it.
That's amazing.
How you doing, guys? Welcome, everybody, to What If We're Right. Today we welcome to the show Raylene, let me get this right, Taskowski? Taskowski. How are you? Welcome.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very excited about today. I've been really looking forward to this talk. Why don't you tell our listeners who you are?
Well, as we said, I'm Raylene Taskowski. I am a speaker and a comedian with a stage show called Stand-Up Comedy Sex Ed and a keynote speech called Let's Talk About Sex, the Value of Open, Honest Discussions about Women's Sexual Health.
Which, for us, I think is really important because I think it's a very uncomfortable conversation for men to get involved in. So that's kind of where I know that's where I'm coming from, is that for me it's almost unknown.
That's why I made it into a comedy show. It is easier to educate you guys if we can keep you laughing at the same time.
That's
exactly,
very true.
And I noticed
true.
In watching your comedy, the reaction was kind of funny because it all kind of starts in a, oh my God, what the hell is she talking about? And then into a laugh. Like with almost every joke, it was like you could see the women going, oh my God, why is she talking about that? And then when you got to your punchline, they'd loosen up and laugh along with you. Do you find that there's a lot of tension at the beginning, or a lot of maybe,
depending
like,
on how I start. So if I start with something innocuous, talking about shaving and stuff like that, it gets people right on board. And then when I get to the sex stuff, they're already loosened up. But if you're talking about my 5-minute that I have up on YouTube, where I start out with 2.8 minutes is how long it takes the average man to orgasm, everybody just freezes, especially the guys. And then I'll say, I bet you a couple of you guys feel pretty good about yourselves right now. But I did have a guy heckle me. He was like, bullshit. And at the time I was still super new as a comedian. So it kind of knocked me off my rhythm, and I didn't have a response for that reaction. But now I think I would just bust him down, and I'm like, oh, okay. So it's just 2.8 seconds for you.
Amateur. That's what he gets.
As a bit of a comedian myself, I still never really got the hang of dealing with hecklers. I'm always very impressed when people can, because I rehearse so much and I get so nervous before I go up there that once you break my rhythm, it's really hard for me to get back into it.
Yeah, no, I saw one of yours today, Vagina Face.
Oh, wow. That is ancient. I like that one. There was actually, you would never know from the 8 people that laugh in that thing, but there was actually 1,100 people in that room.
Oh, no.
It was,
that was my
terrifying.
dream.
And I think that was about my 3rd week of doing comedy.
That's terrifying, then.
Yeah, well, it's sink or swim. Absolutely. Can I ask, how do you go from, like, it doesn't seem like a natural transition from, like, FEMA to stand-up. Is that...
Well, FEMA was just something that I did during Hurricane Katrina, when they needed people who were set and ready to go that they could trust. And I was a firefighter at the time. So
wow.
I went down there for 30 days just to do what needed to be done. And it wound up being pretty good because what they needed was secretarial and management type stuff. And I had that. So yes, I could, do CPR and, do EMS stuff and chop firewood and move sandbags. But what they really needed was people who could manage and operate the computers and get the paperwork done. And so it wound up being a really good experience for me. But where it started was I've been a consultant for an in-home adult party company for the last 13 years. And I, every time I did a party, somebody would say, oh, you should be a stand-up comic. But I had tried comedy for like 3 weeks when I was 27. And I was like, that's scary. I don't want to do that. People are judging me. It's very difficult. And so I said, no, I'm not a stand-up comic. And so about 4 years ago, I had a business coach, and she said, what's your favorite part of the party? And I said, the favorite part of the party is when they are laughing and they are crying and they are peeing themselves and they're getting migraines. And, that's my favorite part. And she said, well, then what about in the shopping room when you're getting them the products that are going to be right for them and right for their relationship? And I'm like, no, that's how I make money. If I could just tell the jokes and then mic drop and walk the fuck out, that would be ideal. And so then she said, you need to go do stand-up comedy. And I was like, no. I'm not going to do that. It's not my thing. And she said, well, you paid me a lot of money to be your business coach. And I'm just telling you right now to go do it. So on April 5th of 4 years ago, I got on stage at the Funny Bone for the very first time. And I'm not going to lie, I killed it. I did a really, really, really solid 5 minutes because it came right out of my parties. And I just, reworded it a little bit so it was more for comedy and less for sales. And I got 2 gigs from that. And then from there, it just kind of took off. But as you probably know, comedy does not pay.
No.
Until you're famous, it doesn't pay shit. But selling sex toys pays really, really well. So,
never would have necessarily thought that, but then again, makes sense. Sex toys,
exactly.
billion-dollar industry, so that makes sense.
Especially if you're educating and entertaining at the same time. So many people will come in and be like, I'm not into this. There's nothing here for me. I'm just here to support my friend. And at the end, they're like, me first. Let me get in the shopping first. And
I want to try this.
Yeah. But it's because they didn't know or they didn't understand or they didn't have a frame of reference or they weren't raised with anything, which is also how I was raised. So it makes a difference. And then a couple of years ago, I just decided that I really wanted to up the ante on doing the comedy and to really push. I wanted it to be co-ed, but our parties are not co-ed. But I thought guys do need to hear this, but they don't need to necessarily hear it in an in-home party with other women. And so I had purchased the domain stand-up comedy sex ed like 5 years ago, and I was just holding on to it. And then one day I was stressing out about money and bills, and I got up in the middle of the night because that's what I do. If I can't sleep, I won't toss and turn. I'll just get up. And I walked into my living room, and there was a book sitting there, and it was You Are a Badass at Making Money. And I picked it up, and I opened to the first page, and it was just like this massive epiphany of why aren't you taking the thing that you love to do and the thing you're amazing at, mix them together and do stand-up comedy sex ed. And so I did.
Genius, really.
I think I bought the opposite of that book. It was You Were a Badass at Coming Up with Horrible Ideas That'll Never Make Money. And I read that almost every night.
Well,
did you find what's the response from men on average? Are they?
Oh, they love it.
Yeah,
they absolutely love it. Yeah. What I love, I'm a words of affirmation person. So is immediately after a show, I will go stand at the door to collect my, my pats on the back and my good jobs. And women have always found me funny. But when I get a guy who walks out and he's like, oh my God, I laughed so hard I almost peed. That right there is just straight up gold in the bank, because guys don't say I laughed until I peed very often. Whereas women, we say it all the time.
Guys don't tend to admit to incontinence under any circumstances.
Exactly. Right. And
Does
so,
that make us exceptions, Eric? I don't want to get into detail.
it's really kind of gratifying. And I mean, I think my biggest fan right now is a guy that came to my show in February. Wait, this is February, October. And he came with his wife and his mother-in-law. And he said, I just came because my wife said that one of her friends was doing comedy. And I was prepared to just sit here and be polite and listen to an amateur for like 20 minutes. And he said, and I laughed for the entire time I was here. And he says, I'm positive you're going to be famous. So I signed a napkin.
Now that you're on our show.
I know.
Well, yeah.
Stepping up.
That's
Moving
it.
on up.
Yeah,
so I signed a t-shirt for him. So if I am famous, that'll be worth something someday.
That's awesome.
Well, you're guaranteed to be a massive celebrity in Canada now. Which
I'm excited. I want to do comedy in Canada someday. That's on my bucket list.
We love comedy in Canada. We're all about it. That's pretty much if we're not apologizing, we're laughing. So
that's true.
Perfect.
We've got some. There's very little support for comedians in Canada. Unfortunately, we've got Yuck Yucks, and that's about it. But it's not a bad scene if you can get in. It's hard to get in here, but you're going through all the proper channels now. I tell you. Once you've got Eric and Gord in the back pocket, we are massive up here.
Perfect. I've got another good friend who does comedy there. He does a lot of cruise ships, which is, I know for some people, they're like, oh, cruise ships are, they're disrespectful of cruise comics. But I mean, for me, as a huge fan of cruising, I'm like, could I have a better life? Like, to get paid to go on a cruise ship, to sit in the sun, to tell jokes for 20 minutes a night. I mean, I don't know what kind of standards other people are ruling their lives by, but fuck yeah, let me be a cruise comic.
I don't see the downside to that.
I think in comedy, if you're not on the road sweating it out for 300 days a year and making no money and going home miserable at the end of it, and for some reason you don't get respect from other comics.
I am definitely taking a different path.
Well, that's good.
Because I'm making money at these shows. I'm making good money at these shows, and I pay my host real well, and I make sure that I give shout outs to the people who treat me well. And so some people are like, well, you're not a real comic, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm making real money, so ha ha.
I think somebody could just suck a big one on that one.
Exactly. And I've got one that I show in my demo that they can go ahead and use.
So
I gotta say this. Years ago, I've had a couple of friends that used to do those the sex toy get-togethers with the women, and one year I actually got invited because, well, I'm way more open-minded about. I'm practically a woman as it is. I have my own boobs, so it kind of works. So I went to the first one, which ended up being one of, I think, 5 I ended up going to. I just had a blast. But every time I went, there was always one particular device that just every time just made my jaw drop to the floor, and hilarity always ensued. It was the one that looks like a giant tongue that wiggles and moves. Do you remember? Have you ever seen that one?
We used to have one. It was called the Tongue of Fun.
That might be the one. It was just every time she goes, well, here's this new one. They bring someone, just die of laughter when this thing came. I'm just like, every toy I get, I can get the function of I get everything about it, but that was the one thing every time that always got me until one grouping where they were drinking, so it's a little more loosey-goosey with things, and they were actually taking some of these toys and trying them. They would go into a back room and try some of them, which...
That was not my company.
No. But for the record, hearing a woman scream from the bathroom with that tongue was a very eye-opening experience.
Yeah,
so maybe there's a point to this thing.